Greetings, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whatever timeline or alternate reality you currently exist in. Welcome to Transdimensional Realities, where we delve into the stranger aspects of our perceived existence. I'm your host, Milyssa Lee, here on the Paranormal UK radio network. And this has been a while since I've done a show. I've been off the last couple of months. I was dealing with some personal things, but I'm back now. I've got several guests all lined up for the next few weeks. So I'm really excited and looking forward to get back into the groove. Now that summer is ending, we're starting to get into my favorite season, spooky season. And I got some great shows, good guests that we're going to be able to talk about some really interesting topics. My guest tonight is Kathleen Ready Dayan. Now, she's an author of what's known as spiritual fiction. And with her two books, Meet Me in Heaven and Before We Were Born, which were inspired by her own real life experiences with spirit intervention, mysterious spirit beings, unlocking innate psychic gifts, spiritual visitation, and past lives. Now, Kathleen has a unique perspective of the spirit world, spirit guides, and past lives. So, welcome, Kathleen, to the program.
Hi, Melissa. So nice to meet you and to be on your show.
Oh, thank you for coming on. Really excited to talk with you today um, about your personal experiences. And I know a lot of those experiences helped formulate your ideas for your two spiritual themed novels. And so let's start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit where you're from and how this ball got rolling.
Okay, I will. I live in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and so I'm right on the coast near the ocean. Lovely little spot here. I started opening up as a medium about 20 years ago, and that happened for me after I had a couple of significant losses in my life. And the first one was one of my sisters. So I come from a family of five girls, and I'm the youngest. And one of my sisters passed very suddenly. And before that happened, we had both had odd dreams about something coming. And it
Hmm.
was the first time. I hear spirit, I'm clairaudient, and I think this is the first time it happened for me. I was sleeping and I heard a male voice say, very booming, loud voice say to me, 10 more days. And it was quite frightening.
Huh.
So I woke up very, anxious about that. And I talked to my sister, and she had had a scary dream too about the fact that she was about to die in this dream. And so we kind of, said it was just a dream and kind of talked each other through it because we were both fearful. And, about 2 weeks after the dream, it wasn't 10 days exactly, around 2 weeks, she passed away suddenly. And that was a very startling, all of that was so startling for me. Of course, her early passing, and just the fact that I was given a little bit of a heads up that something was coming.
Mhm.
Um, and then after that happened, about 3 months after she passed away, I had another dream, which was, I believe the way that spirit first started to get through to me was when I was sleeping. And
Mhm.
maybe my resistance is down or whatever that is. I've had a number of experiences like that. And in this situation, I was sleeping and I could suddenly see myself asleep in the bed, and I could see the room and I could see it was as if I was a fly on the wall and could see all around me. And I could, see the door, and in through the door came my sister Mary. She came walking through, and she had two figures standing behind her. It was just an outline at the
Hmm.
time. I never saw their faces. I think they were guides, something like that. They had like a gold light around them, and I think they were male.
People
And
who accompanied her, kind of like escorted her.
yes, that's right. They brought her. She came and she sat next to me, She sat on the bed and she held my hand, and I could feel her hand as if it were physical. And we talked, and she did say to me that I need to move on, almost to like another place to learn something. There was something place she had to go. I don't know if it had to do with some kind of educational thing, so she was continuing on her life in the spirit world. But she said, I want you to know, if you don't feel me, I'm going to come back. I'll be back. I need to go for a little bit and I'll be back. She stood up and she just walked through the wall out to the outside of the house, and these figures behind her did the same. They walked out in unison. And so these events were really the ones that um, made me curious, made
Mhm.
me very interested in the fact that there was this other side of life that seemed to be communicating with me in this very like reasonable way, not like a dream where you have scattered thoughts or scattered things happening. It was just very clear. So I started sometime after this, my husband and I is really my partner in mediumship.
Mhm.
And, we started going to mediums primarily at the spiritualist church that's near us. We
Mhm.
learned about that, and it was a great place to find out more about all of this. And then, the final event that happened when I was sleeping is I had another one where I heard this male voice talking. This time it wasn't booming. He was just having a conversation, and he said, would you like 30 more days? And I heard my own voice say yes.
Oh my
And
God.
yes. And I'm thinking again, is it me? Is someone going to pass? And it ended up being a friend from almost my childhood, like my teenage years into my early 20s. And he and I had left and we had dated. And so it was back, a long time ago. But we were very connected. And at the time, and then it was a bad breakup. We hadn't talked to each other in 20 years.
Hmm.
So it ended up being, a precursor to his death. And I didn't know that at the time, but we ended up talking on the phone 3 days before he died. We talked about everything.
Wow.
And just, we left the conversation with, I love you. I love you. We both said, I love you. And no hard feelings. And yeah, yeah. And, uh, and then, 3 days later, he passed to spirit.
And you're getting booming voices with complete sentences. I've only ever heard my name being called, and
Ah,
it's like not booming, just I couldn't tell if it was male or female, but it's happened several times in my life. Like somebody's trying to get my attention.
yes. I've had that too, but were you asleep or awake?
I was in that cusp of almost sleeping, very relaxed. I was
Yeah,
still conscious. I wasn't asleep, definitely wasn't asleep, because
yeah,
I bolted upright when I would hear it. When I was
yeah,
a kid, it happened a couple of times, and I was wide awake. I thought my mother was calling me from across the house. So I'd go
uh-huh.
and say, "What do you want?" She goes, "I didn't call you." I go, "I heard you." And her
Yes.
typical response was, "Must have been your imagination."
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But
Well,
to have these kind of voices come in with timelines, that's very interesting.
I haven't had it since then. I will sometimes. So that little in between the cusp between sleep and awake, I think that's a really magical time. Like to
Mhm.
me, if I have a spirit visit me, they'll come in right then and I'll see their face right in front of me, just briefly, just 30 seconds maybe. I'll see it right there. But it's my favorite, way of communicating with spirit or having a visitation from them because it's so clear. I can see them. So they look exactly the way that I knew them, only perfect. So no lines on the face or, nothing that made you think, that there's any sadness or it's just, their pure soul. I think it's like a really wonderful thing between sleep and awake. And I have sometimes when I am going off to sleep, I'll hear my name called,
Hmm.
but not the way those two experiences where I had, the full sentences. It was really that was like extraordinary for me because I had never heard of anything like that. I didn't know anything about mediumship at the time.
Okay. See, I've had two incidents where someone who's died visited me in my dreams, but they were vivid dreams. One time I was interrupted having a normal, what I call anxiety dreams. When you're doing this dream, you're trying to accomplish something, and everything is preventing you from accomplishing whatever goal. And then all of a sudden, this person just popped in, and everything changed, vivid, and like you said, they looked young and vibrant and colorful. I lost my twin brother 10 years ago,
Oh,
and
I'm so sorry.
suddenly, and it took about 4 months, but the same thing happened with him. He
Ah,
appeared in a dream to me. It was kind of funny because of how we react to each other, and then a lot happened that I can't remember. I know we had a conversation, but I can't remember it. So yeah, this stuff is just always fascinates me.
it is fascinating. I wonder if you do you feel him a lot since you're, twins?
No, no, I don't feel him. Um, I, I the last time I felt was about 9 years ago. I was having a minor procedure and I was in the waiting room waiting to go in. And I felt all of a sudden there was like five, 4 or 5 people, maybe it's four people came in the room and I couldn't see, but I knew who they were. It was my father, my grandmother, an aunt of mine who had passed away a couple years before, and my twin brother. Now, this was after he appeared to me in the dream. So, what was interesting was I was having this interaction all up here. Couldn't see anybody, but I felt them.
Ah,
My brother stood in the background. He was there, but he let the others talk because I've never seen them before. And
oh,
it's not like I heard words. I'm getting weepy again. Not that I heard words, but just they were there to comfort me. And it was
yes.
the one and only time that they have ever appeared. Now, since then, I don't sense anybody.
Hmm.
I sometimes think they think, okay, you're on your own now.
If you need them, they'll be there. And sometimes we don't know when they're there. They are, but you're never alone. There's always your spirit family around you.
I used to be more connected, but I went through some trauma. And since then, it's been hard to get my head out of the physical world
Ah,
and, you know, allowing the physical world to get to me too much. And
yeah.
instead of relaxing and trusting in spirit and trusting that things are going to work out.
Hmm.
So it's been a challenge. I'm trying to work my way back.
You will. Just take a little bit of time.
So what are some of the other things that you were experiencing?
So let's see. So the next pivotal event, I suppose, was I was at my husband and I went to the spiritualist church that was near us, and we heard they were going to have a table tipping. I had never heard of it, really didn't give it that much weight, but she said, we're going to do this night if you want to come. So we thought, yeah, it sounds interesting. We'll go. And have you ever experienced it, a table tipping?
No, no,
Okay,
I've never been to a what I would call a seance before.
okay,
So I have not experienced that in person.
okay. So it was, so it's a small, like a pedestal table, a round table with the
Mhm.
pedestal at the bottom. And there were probably 6 or 7 groups of people, like around, like 6 or 7 tables with groups around it. And you put your hands on the table, and if a spirit comes through and they connect with someone, the table will start to vibrate under your fingers, and then it will start to rock. And we were with the pastor from the church was at our table, and she's a very talented medium, and she's just very lovely and patient. And she said, she was trying to tap into the spirit, and the table started to move, and then it sort of, for lack of a better word, the table walked over to me and landed on my lap.
Wow.
And yes, it was astounding. And after that, we used the table. It stayed on my lap and the pastor said, he's giving you a hug. It's the spirit trying to touch physically, and just stayed like on my lap for quite a while.
Uh-huh.
And then we got some messages from the medium, and also we had the table tap out some answers using the alphabet. But it was my friend who had passed that I had got to say goodbye to, and he talked to us that night, and that that was the first time I'd seen anything happen like that outside of a dream state.
Hmm.
So we walked out, we got in our car, and we looked at each other, and we're just like, what was that? I mean, that was a real shift in consciousness, because then I knew this is all real. This is not my mind that's imagining these things happening to me, with my sister coming. Or I had a real, strong understanding that, she actually was coming to me, and it just changed the way I saw the world.
So when your sister first came to you, it sounded like you were having an out-of-body experience when she came in. But when she sat on the bed and was holding your hand, which hand was she holding? The physical you still lying in the
Yes.
bed? Were
Yes.
you just still up above watching the whole scene?
I was looking at her while we were talking from the position of the bed.
Okay.
So as if I was me in the bed, but you know, I don't think I still had that 360-degree vision. I'm not sure of that. I don't remember it that way. But when
Hmm.
the dream started, I remember seeing what I was wearing. Like I was looking down on myself like an aerial view, um, because I had fallen asleep wearing a turtleneck sweater. It was the fall, and I remember seeing that and thinking, like, I don't usually sleep in my clothes like that. But I remember seeing that I had that on, and just observing it and being aware of it. And then, I could see everything else in the room, and then I saw through the open door, I saw Mary coming.
Hmm.
So but I think once she sat on the bed, yeah, it felt very physical. I don't know if I was completely out of my body, if this was just I'm not sure how to describe it other than, I had the ability to see everything at the same time.
Right, right. I've heard of that from people who've had out of bodies. It's like you don't deal with the problems of physical sight, eyes forward, peripheral vision. You're able to see 360 around
Yes.
you.
Yes, that's right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, when you started all this, you started to when did you realize you were doing mediumship? And how did you progress from there?
Well, I really want, now that I knew this was a real thing, and the people who died were still right there close enough for contact.
Hmm.
I really wanted to open up as a medium, and I'd seen enough mediums working at the church, and I wanted to do that. So I took some classes at the church, and I spent a lot of time at home meditating with intention. This is what I'm going to do. And in my mind, I was going to be like the people I'd watched at the church who were, able to look out on a crowd and say, oh, so and so, in the red shirt, there's a man standing behind you, and describe it. That's what I pictured. What actually happened, when I was at the church one night, there was a Native American man that was a member of the church, and he was a healer and a medium, and he was doing a healing. He was teaching me how to heal, and he had his hand on my back, And he said to me, "Oh, you're a trance medium." And I said, "Oh, no, I'm not." And he goes, "Yeah, you are. You're a trance medium." And I was like, "Oh, well, I don't have any interest in that. I don't even know what that is. It sounds scary, right?"
Mhm.
So eventually, this all started to happen where I would, again, I would hear when spirit would come through. I was starting to hear a word or two here or there. And like you mentioned, I'd hear my name being called when I'd going off to sleep. There was a lot of hearing involved. I did start seeing auras and I started seeing spirit lights inside my house. And then you know, it did progress to the point. I mean, we were communicating with spirit purposefully. We were, sitting together and setting our intention and doing this thing, and I'd hear certain things. And then, you know, it started to progress to the point of being like my consciousness would drop, and I could feel them trying to speak through me. And I didn't want to get to the point where, trance mediums they drop their consciousness to the point that they are gone, like they're out.
They've
And
taken such a huge back seat, they don't even know what's going on.
yeah, and that's not really something that would be comfortable for me. And I just made that very clear. I've found along the way that there's certain times I've had to draw lines and say, this is not something I'm comfortable with. I'm not
Mhm.
going to do this. I will, if you guys want to try to speak through me, I'll do that as long as I'm here too.
Mhm.
I'm part of the conversation. And that is primarily how I communicate now. So, I don't do it that often anymore. It was like incessant, constant. We were so fascinated by it that we were doing it a lot. We were constantly talking and to people in spirit. And now it's like it's more of an occasional thing. Every couple of weeks or something, I'll sit down and invite spirit to come through and speak to us. And I'm very selective about that. I always want it to be our family, our friends, or if it's a teacher or a guide, it's like someone who's here for my best and highest good. And I feel safe in doing that because I've had really good guides and teachers who've given us tremendous information.
With friends and family coming through, I've been to a few mediums, so see air quotes, for readings, and most of the time, I don't feel like they're connecting.
Yeah.
Or I have a friend, but she knows me too well.
Uh,
So sometimes I'm not saying they're faking. I don't think what's coming through is the person that they say it is.
I see.
Um, I also, and let me ask you this. I also feel that sometimes there are some spirits that come through as tricksters, pretending to be other people. It's like when people inexperienced use a Ouija board or some other communication device to talk to somebody, and they think they're talking to, Grandpa Joe, but they're
Yeah.
really not because you have no idea understanding who you're talking to. Um, so how would you differentiate? Are you feeling different energies? How would you know that you're actually talking to the person you're supposed to be?
I have on occasion felt someone come through that didn't feel right. That
Mm-hmm,
felt it didn't feel like the person to me, and I shut it down
mm-hmm,
because that took some practice too, learning that this is um it's something I have to be precise about, and I have to talk to my guides about and say, listen, you know you're in charge here of who's coming through.
mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to continue to communicate, I cannot have anybody slipping through that's trying to just cause mischief or wreak havoc in my life.
Sure.
And that happened early on, and it hasn't happened in a very long time.
I know a lot of paranormal investigators, which I was one for many years. I still occasionally do it on the side, but I've also changed my views so much since then. And forget the TV shows. Don't even get me started.
Mhm.
Um, but unfortunately, so many people don't know how to protect themselves, and they go into these locations, opening themselves up, and then they wind up having something follow them home.
Wow.
And I had that one of the very first times I was out, I had that happen to me. Luckily, I was quickly able to get rid of it myself.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I mean, some people could have a lot of issues if they're not protecting yourself. And what steps do you take to like surround yourself with protection, or do you?
I do. I see myself surrounded in white light, and I try if I, am sitting in like it's really a brief meditation. It's not anything that takes very long for me to connect, but as I'm sitting there, I can picture myself as if I'm looking down at my feet, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing that I'm existing in this white light, which is sort of this, shimmery white light that I've seen on occasion when I've been given a visual of someone in the spirit world. And so I see myself as there and just, surrounded by something that can't be penetrated by something of darkness.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You've had that one first time you've had an out of body experience. Have you had them since?
I have not had them since.
So just the one time. Okay. What about in either in dreams or in meditation, astral traveling, either somewhere else or even seeing, visiting on the other side? Have you had any experiences with that?
I have had some of those. You know, I have back when we were really intensely coming at that, I had a lot more of these experiences when we were practicing every day with at least meditating every day and really very focused on it. I have seen myself in various situations on the other side of life.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw myself once with my friend who passed, standing on the edge of this just magnificent lake.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the trees, and the trees are on the scale of, I don't know if you've ever seen the redwood trees in California, but like that, like
We're up there.
huge.
Yes.
And just this very, very quiet. And I remember thinking, like, why is it, where is everyone? Because it was just us. And it was a very peaceful, like, loving moment. But I was wondering where everyone was. And my friend was telling me, you know, that it's so big. It's so big here that we can be here with no one here. It's expansive.
Mm-hmm.
The spirit world is not one little place. It's really what we create. And I think, when I was with this friend, when he was still alive and back when we were young, we used to, go up to Vermont and we would, go camping in the woods and stuff. And this is something that we both enjoyed. So
Okay.
it's not surprising to me that we were out in nature someplace and he was just kind of giving me a little bit of a show. Like, look, check this out, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I had that happen. Um, I'm trying to think what else would be of interest to you. I did see one time during a meditation as if I were Ariel looking down on a landscape, and it was a Native American village. And I think it's maybe was a past life because I've been told that I had a past life as a Native American. And I saw these homes that were sort of rounded, rounded tops to them,
Mm-hmm.
and just almost like I was flying over it. I knew where the edges were, and I sort of like was familiar to me. But again, it was a brief vision.
Right. Well, since you mentioned a past life, I mean, what are your thoughts or experiences dealing with reincarnation, either remembering your own past lives or when you're reading someone else, past life memories come through?
I don't read people,
Mm.
so I don't I don't commercially do something like that. I have it's always been private, to us it's very personal, and it's my family, my friends, and people who are connected to my family or friends that are going through something and need that connection. I will open myself up for people like that. Or once in a while, somebody will come through and say, "Can you please give a message to so," and I'll do that. But it's just not something I ever felt like I wanted to make money from doing because
No, no.
it felt very, very personal to me. Um, but what I have, the first thing I will say to you about that is that back when, so when I was a young woman, I was a active alcoholic, and I got sober when I was 26. And after that time, I started getting those little in between dream and awake, that little place. I started
Mhm.
seeing these little quick visions, and they would repeat. So it was not just one night, it happened a number of times. There were a few things, but there was one that was dominant, and it was that I was in an aerial place, as if I were flying, but I wasn't. I was just looking down from the sky at this car, and it was maybe the 1950s. I'm not sure exactly, maybe 60s even, but um, at this car driving down a country road. In the distance, there's a parade making, I think it's a parade. There's a band playing patriotic music. And I'm thinking it's like the 4th of July, it's something like that. In the distance, maybe the car has just left there and it's going someplace. I'm getting closer and I see there's a man driving the car, there's a woman in the passenger seat. I see just a little bit of her face, and she's got blonde hair and a hat. And I wake up. But as I wake up, I know that this woman is about to die, that the car is going to crash and she's going to die. And I had that dream, I don't know how many times. It was back when I was still in my 20s and early 30s. And then I started to think, I think it might be me in that dream. I think it's something that happened to me, which didn't really connect with what I understood at that time. But
Right,
it was, you know what I'm saying? But now I look back and think, yeah, that's very likely what that was.
right. Interesting. Um, I I'll tell you a little bit about with my experiences, which was I've had a couple of precognitive dreams. I dreamed about 9/11 2 days before it happened.
Oh, wow.
But here's the thing with my dreams, they tend to be highly symbolic.
Hmm.
So in the dream, I was standing on a shoreline to a big river. There were no trees. It was all barren. It was almost like red sand, barren, and really interesting landscape. And I couldn't see the other side of the river, but I knew New York was over there.
Ah,
All of a sudden, I saw two nuclear explosions going off side by side. And as the mushroom clouds rose, they had the big long stalks.
wow.
And in the dream, me and other people were trying to get out of there. And then I saw a third explosion far to the south.
Wow.
Now, I woke up out of the dream going, okay, that's interesting. I didn't know what it was. Then 2 days later, 9/11 happened, but I didn't put two and two together. It took
Mhm.
another 2 days watching some of the footage when all of a sudden the dream came rushing back, and I was like, oh my.
Yeah.
Um, and I've had a couple of incidents like that, but my dreams tend to be very symbolic. So I was trying to read the symbolism in the dreams. I've read dreams for other people, um, depending on the symbolism in dreams.
Yeah.
So, whether your consciousness or your higher self and spirit, you reach that stage where you're in touch with the collective consciousness. And one thing I always struggle with, and you can tell me your thoughts on this, is one thing I struggled with was dreaming of the future or seeing the future. And I go, well, the future hasn't happened yet. How can anyone see the future? And these last few years, I started hearing more about and listening to the idea of time is an illusion, that
Hmm.
all time is actually happening at once. It's
Hmm.
our human perception of time that makes it linear because that's how we perceive our existence. That's what these, you know,
Yes,
sacks of muscle up here, that's all it can comprehend.
right.
So, but then there's also multiple variations, multiple timelines happening, which is why, depending on your actions, you can either go left or right. And depending on which way you go, will determine which outcome you're heading towards or the next series of events. And things could have been totally different if you would have went the other way.
Right. So how does that work? Is that what you're asking? Like in terms
Well,
of if,
just curious if you're
yeah,
familiar with that concept and what your thoughts are on it.
I think it's so interesting. And I can't tell you I have my arms around this, the time, everything happening at once. I don't know, maybe I'm not bright enough to get that. Maybe someday I will. But I think when we tap into certain energies like you are, you're tapping into some knowledge when you have these dreams. Apparently I did too with just with the deaths that were coming, although those seem to be more, someone directly telling me. I haven't had the future predictions in the way that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, our self-will comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So self-will comes in, and that's the whether you go left or right, like you said. And one of those, if one of those hijackers had said, I'm not going forward with this, that would have changed everything. But it was already happening, and spirit knew it, and you picked it up. You tapped into that and picked it up. I'm guessing because there was no turning back. So
Mm-hmm.
I do think that there are some things that are so strongly moving in a direction that they can read that they're about to happen.
That makes sense. That makes sense. There's also 9/11 is another perfect example. How many people called in sick that day? They never call out, or they just felt funny or something. They made excuses. They did not go to work that day.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, they were able to survive it. So many people did go, but just a few people just got
Yeah.
that intuition. It's like people um, who get an intuition, like they're going to go drive somewhere, and they realize, no, I better wait. And
Yeah.
you wait 10 minutes, and then you find out that there was an accident that happened up ahead that you probably were going to be a part of.
Yes. It's our spirit, don't you think? I think it's our own spirit that's tapped in. So that your soul was in direct contact with the greater consciousness,
Hmm.
and you picked up that information. And
Hmm.
I think when things are happening that are not supposed to happen in our lives, this is not part of our spirit path as we've set it out. I think our own spirit is alerting us. I think that's what intuition is.
Well, sometimes our spirit, or sometimes you get your guides step in.
That's right.
People have said that they're driving and they hear a voice say, pull over now, pull
Right.
over. And it's so strong, they pull over, and it's the same situation. They avoided an accident.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they could have been killed. Um, it's part of the reason when I do this program is to look into all of these things that most people don't realize are part of our everyday reality. We've just had it programmed out of us, or we don't pay attention to it. when all these things are happening around us all the time?
That's right.
Interesting. Now, are you familiar or can you talk about your guides? Have you met your guides that you remember, or is there somebody that you deal with consistently?
I have a guide who I was with in a past life. I know I have more than one guide, but this one is staying with me for my whole life. And
Hmm.
he's a Native American man, and his name is Standing Bear. And when I communicate, he is the easiest one, pretty much the easiest one for me to communicate with because we're very bonded. And I'll ask him if I want to tap in and talk and get information. He's the closest one.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you're not involved in it as much as you used to be. Do you still sometimes things just pop in when you're not prepared for it, either thoughts or something happens that just, or do you have to actually concentrate on it these days in order to tap in to that information and that energy?
It's more of the latter.
Okay.
I may sense that someone's around, or that happens to me a lot. So I have, I guess, what would be some clairsentience. So I can feel if someone is touching my arm, if there's a spirit near, they'll touch my skin, and I'll just feel the it's pins and needles kind of, or like you've been on like electricity on your arm and on my head. My hair will stand up a little. I'll feel like someone's electrically touching me. And I
Mhm.
have that sometimes, especially if I'm, not having a great day, or if like I have headaches, I have chronic headaches, and a lot of times if I'm just trying to sit with myself and get past that, I'll
Mhm.
feel someone come in, and if occasionally I'll feel pressure on my head, almost like someone's just laying their palm, like right here on my head, just that will happen spontaneously. I think it's just spirits around me who are letting me know we're here. But other than that, I don't see spirit out in the world. So
Mhm.
when I see something, I'm not that good at it. But when I do, it's during communication. I'll suddenly get a picture of them. I'll see something, or when I'm dreaming and they pop in, of course. But I don't see them I don't, I wish I could do that, like see somebody standing, with another, living person, but that doesn't happen to me.
Okay. What are your thoughts on this? Is on a lot of people's minds, whether they're religious or not, but what are your thoughts on God, creator, creative force? I mean, what do you have you experienced anything to to increase your understanding of what this possibly could be?
To me, everything that's been given to me through these communications, all the information that came, just shows me that, you know, God or source, infinite spirit, all these things is all loving, all
Mhm.
all good. There's no negative coming from any of this. And it is, that we're all a piece of that. So we're all source energy. And when we become physical, you know, the main part of us is that source energy. And when I say all of us, it's not just people, it's the animals, it's everything alive, the trees, the flowers, everything has source energy in it. And that's how I view the world now,
Mhm.
that we're all, every single thing that I see, if I see someone who is a great human being or a horrible human being, I know it's a piece of God, you
Mhm.
know, and we're all showing different sides of ourselves and our own struggles. And being on earth is not an easy thing. And I think it's harder for people who, don't have any kind of sensitivity to spirit or to the fact that, you are constantly and like abundantly loved by your creator. Um, that's life changing for me to feel that kind of love.
Okay. Okay. So you've written two novels.
Mhm.
And what prompted you to start writing and writing fiction, but spiritual fiction?
So when we started communicating with spirit, I was already a writer, but I was also practicing law. I was an attorney,
Okay.
and I had written one novel, and it was about getting sober. But it
Hmm.
was also, I wrote it, fictionally, but because again, I felt like there was something important that I wanted to share when I wrote that novel. It was about breaking stereotypes around it, addicts and addiction. So I already had that background. When I receive so much information, primarily about the fact that we're eternal beings, we're not going to die, that we're just going to, shed the skin, the snake skin's going to drop, and we're going to move on to our pure selves, and all these, beautiful, beautiful, powerful messages, they changed my life. They made me not fear death, and I always had until then. And they made me feel less grief because I knew that the people I loved who had passed were really still here and they weren't gone. There is no gone. There's a change, but there's not an end. And I decided I wanted to share that information. And I didn't feel that I wanted to share all the experiences we had as a sort of nonfiction, look at the answers we have. Because honestly, I mean, nobody's an expert in this, not really. We'll be experts when we get to the other side and we know it all, but we're all getting pieces of information in various form and various, amounts and messages. And I just wanted to take those principles and build a story around them. And so I thought the first book that I wrote, it's about these two soulmates. It opens up with them choosing to be born. So it starts in the spirit world, and one of them, the woman, really wants to be born to somebody that was her mother in a past life. Her partner is hesitant, is not particularly feeling that this is what we should do at this point right now. But he says to her, I'll follow you. I always do. And so he's born close to her, right down the street on purpose. He goes to a woman who's going to have a baby, but she's an alcoholic and a drug addict. And he's born 3 months early and he has fetal alcohol syndrome.
Hmm.
So it sets the stage for now we have these two soulmates who have, promised to, be together through lifetimes and they're born right down the street. They're going to know each other, which was what his will was saying. No matter what, I'm going to meet you. I'm going to find you. And he does. But even though they bond incredibly, they have a very, very close bond as children. They find each other at 3 years old. He crawls under her fence, and he's a tiny little thing. He's born with, fetal alcohol syndrome, and takes him a long time to catch up. He can't talk yet, but
Hmm.
she understands him. She's the only one that, she says he talks to me, and everyone says, Jeremy can't talk. And she said, he does talk. He talks to me. She doesn't realize that they're communicating telepathically.
Hmm.
And anyway, it's about these two souls, and the idea is, it's about soulmates who travel together, but also it's not easy. It's never going to be easy. When you hit the earth plane, you're going to have challenges. You're going to have to make choices. None of us are perfect. We all have this self-will that really is the thing that primarily pushes us off our spirit path. And we have to come to terms with the people in our lives when these two go head to head. There's problems, between them, and they're not always together. But it's what life is, that's part of the, earth school, if you will,
Right.
that you have to go through these experiences, have some hard knocks and figure it out, because if you weren't going to come here and learn, there's really no point in coming.
Right, right. And there's only lessons you can learn in the physical. The analogy I always use is, a child can be told, don't touch the hot stove. And they'll
Yes.
go, okay. And maybe they listen, maybe they don't, but it's that child who actually does it, touches the stove, gets burned, realizes, the consequences of their action, but they also had the physical experience that really drove the lesson home. And
Yeah.
I think that's what life is in general for us. There's a lot we could learn already on the other side, different places we can go, but that's what I've always heard about Earth. Earth is graduate school. It's a really tough program,
Yeah.
and it's not for the faint-hearted.
Yes. Yes. I appreciate that. I like that what you said. And about the stove too. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. I didn't want to even though it's a very romantic idea that two soulmates travel together through lifetimes
Mhm.
and then meet in the spirit world in between. I mean, it's romantic as you can get. It's a love story that never ends. However, it's like I didn't want to romanticize it, if you will, to make it this soft, it's not a romance novel.
Mhm.
It's not gonna end the way you think it's gonna end,
Mhm.
and I one of the ideas I had when I started writing was understanding that life continues after death. I thought I want to write a book where the protagonist dies and it's a happy ending because
Okay.
that's not the way it's usually perceived.
Right, right. That's an interesting concept. So, your books, where can people find those?
Probably the easiest thing is to go to Amazon. There are some other stores that carry it. I'm here in the Northeast. I don't know where you're even located. Isn't that terrible?
I'm in the Northeast. I'm in New Jersey.
Oh, you are. Okay. I thought
Yeah,
maybe you.
way North Jersey. I can see the Manhattan skyline from my house.
Oh, wow. So that makes your vision even more um, important because it was right in practically in your neighborhood with
Yeah.
9/11.
Yes.
Yeah, significant.
Okay.
Um, So yeah, that and then also I have a website and it's spirit-fiction.com.
Okay.
And I'm on Instagram and on Facebook also under Spirit Fiction.
Excellent. Well, Kathleen, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and talking about your experiences and the books and sharing the information where people can find you. So, thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
So that was our guest, Kathleen Ready Dayan, author of her spiritual fiction books, Meet Me in Heaven and Before We Were Born. As she said, they can be found on Amazon, and she has her website and her social media. So I highly recommend go check those out. That was a lot of fun. I also wanted to mention a couple of things on my end personally. I have just posted, since I haven't been on here since June, I've created my own website, which you can go here to melissalee.com. Very simple, although the way I spell my name, it's pay attention to the spelling. And on there, I am offering services and sharing some of my creative endeavors. So I do tarot card readings, which I've mentioned before. So people who want a reading can book through there. But I also advertise the paranormal investigations if anybody needs help with anything. And something else that I do is I am a book editor and I format independent manuscripts for authors who are going to self-publish. I format the books, edit them, and get them all prepared to upload them to a service like Amazon, Kindle, or Barnes and Noble to get it out there and get it distributed for them. And of course, I've done so many books for Irene, her new book, Directive 17, which is a new spy novel, which I highly recommend that people look into because I think it's one of the best things she's written so far. Very, very true to life and non-romantic. A spy novel with no romance, but it really hits you here. So I gave it 5 stars. So, but you can also the show will also be posted on there as people to access it. And another thing I've been doing lately is I've been writing songs. It's something creative that kind of popped in the last couple of months. And I've written a few songs. They're going out on Spotify and Apple Music and other platforms. And again, I put links to those in my website if you want to stream them, download them. They're interesting songs. Now, I'm the first to admit I write lyrics. I can't write music to save my life. And while I have a decent singing voice, it's not quite what I'm looking for. So I did use AI for the vocals and the musical arrangements. So don't hate me for that. But all the lyrics are me, and I come up with the story. So check those out as well. So I've got a lot going on. Now, we will be having more shows coming on. I've got guests booked all through next month. So I'm really excited to be back and looking forward to seeing where we go from here. So until next time, you all have a great week, a wonderful Labor Day weekend coming up, and be good humans. And we'll talk to you soon.